For as long as there have been board meetings, speakers have had the right to exercise an option of speaking at the public forum or speaking to specific agenda items. I was denied that right tonight for no good and ethical reason. In 3 weeks, Winston Brooks will become the senior-most administrative role model of the student standard of conduct, but he will not be accountable to that standard by his own deliberate choice. A proof of that allegation is as simple as the answer to a question. Are you willing to be held accountable for 6.5 hours a day that you hold children accountable to the pillars of character counts? Will you be held accountable to that same standard of conduct by a system over which you have no control and even against your will, Mr. Brooks?
Madam Chair, we do not answer questions in public forum. Thank you very much.
Robert Lucero is out of order, Madam Chair.
You know, I'm the one that calls the people in and out of order, and I would just like for you to speak, and Mr. Brooks doesn't have to answer. Thank
Of
you.
course, and he's not going to answer, and that's part of the cowardice that's a problem here.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, as you are aware, there are 2 standards of conduct in this district, one for children and one for adults. The standard of conduct for children is a higher standard by far than the standard of conduct for adults. There is nothing in an adult code of conduct which requires them to be role models of the student standard of conduct. If we expect our children to grow up to honor, courage, and honor and character, somebody has to show them what it looks like. Somebody has to hold themselves accountable as a role model of the student standard of conduct. And my question for the board is there a single member of the board or a single member of the senior administration of this district who is willing to hold themselves honestly accountable to the student standard of conduct, or even to engage in a candid, forthright, and honest discussion of the student standard of conduct and the adult standard of conduct?
Thank you.
I'm not done. I have 53 seconds left. And I would like you all to think about the fact that you don't have the courage, the courage or the character to even address this issue.
Well, you can use your 35 minutes if you want to say anything further, and if not, we should call on the next person, Mr. McQuigg.
I'm allowed 2 minutes.
Right? But you're just not saying anything, so we
I
need
don't have
to.
to say anything to make my point. My point is that there isn't one of you with the character or the courage to even conduct a candid, forthright, and honest discussion of administrative standards and accountability. The community deserves more. Your conduct as role models is shameful. Board. 15 years ago, the leadership of the APS paid the founder of Character Counts, Michael Josephson, to come to Albuquerque to train me and 29 other teachers. I personally conducted over 36 trainings in character counts, district-wide, citywide, and statewide. I provided a training attended by a sitting state governor. Over a period of about a decade, I trained thousands of students in the fundamentals of character counts. I'm familiar enough with the program to know that there's not a single legitimate agenda in the entire APS that does not move forward dramatically on the day that character really counts in the APS. There will be far less truancy, fewer dropouts, higher graduation rates, higher test scores, far less bullying, and far less chronic classroom disruption. The sad truth is that character counts in the APS is an abysmal failure for one reason and one reason only. In the 15 years since the Board of Education unanimously approved character counts as the model for character education and as the standard of conduct for students, there has not been a single board member nor a single superintendent willing to step up as a role model. Not a single leader in the APS has role modeled the student standard of conduct by holding themselves honestly accountable to the same standard of conduct that they enforce upon students. Children do not learn to embrace higher standards of conduct from those who say, "Do as I say and not as I do." They do not now, they never have, and they never will. If we truly want our children to grow to embrace character and courage and honor, someone has to show them what it looks like. Someone has to show them what honest accountability to meaningful standards of conduct looks like. Somebody has to step up as a role model of the student standard of conduct by holding themselves honestly accountable to the very same standard of conduct. Somebody has to lead by their personal example. And the question is the same question it's always been. Is there a single member of the leadership of the Albuquerque Public Schools who has the character and the courage to step up as a role model of the student standard of conduct?
Thank you.
Thank you. Board members, Superintendent Brooks, thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. According to an article in the Journal yesterday, Superintendent Brooks says that we need to be trying to change the public perception of the public schools. One perception in particular tops that list. There's a public perception that the leadership of the APS is so riddled with corruption and incompetence that it cannot survive an impartial and honest audit. The perception is not groundless. Governor Bill Richardson says APS has an earned statewide reputation for its lack of financial accountability. Mayor Martin Chavez says there's so little accountability in the APS that he thinks he needs to change the state constitution in order to appoint his own school board members. Former Albuquerque Public Schools Chief of Police Gil Lovato was quoted in the Journal saying, "If the truth gets out, there will not be a single senior administrator in the APS left standing." The perception is not groundless. It's an important perception because unless it's changed, it's unlikely that the leadership of the APS will ever pass another mill levy or bond issue. Voters are vowing to vote against any new taxes for as long as the leadership of the APS refuses to hold itself accountable. The perception is easily changed. If an impartial auditor, an auditor representing the public's interest and trusted by the public, came out of an audit of the APS and assured us that there was no corruption or incompetence or the practices that enable them in the APS, the public perception would be immediately changed. Your continued refusal to even discuss such an audit cements the perception that you have something to hide. If you truly want to change public perception, you will begin an immediate, full-scale, impartial forensic audit of the entire APS, or you will be candid, forthright, and honest about the reasons why you will not have an audit. Stakeholders have a right to ask this question, and you have an obligation to answer it.
Thank you.
If one were looking for proof that the leadership of the APS is covering up an ethics and accountability scandal, one would have to look no further than the faces of the board members and the administrators who cannot even look into the eyes of stakeholders, who cannot look into the eyes of their constituents and give a candid, forthright, and honest answer to the question of an immediate, full-scale forensic audit of the entire leadership of the APS. There's every reason in the world to conduct this audit. The governor of the state of New Mexico said the leadership of the APS has a statewide earned reputation for its lack of financial accountability. The miners audit revealed $1 billion a year being spent without adequate rules, without adequate accountability to the rules, and without keeping adequate records. It's likely that there are millions of tax dollars missing. Two subordinates in the finance division who should have blown the whistle on this scandal years ago have now been promoted to senior positions in the division. Mayor Marty Chavez is so concerned with the lack of accountability in the leadership of the APS that he feels he has to appoint his own board members to deal with the problem. Your own chief of police, Gil Lovato, said if you ever got to court and if the truth ever got out, there wouldn't be a single senior APS administrator left standing. There's every reason to do an audit. There is no reason not to do the audit except to protect the corrupt and the incompetent in the leadership of the APS. And there is no reason at all that stakeholders cannot expect you to look them in the eyes and respond candidly, forthrightly, and honestly to the question of an audit.
Thank you.
I would like to draw your attention to the example that you're setting for students and staff, the role that you are modeling. You insist that the character of students counts. You hold them accountable to a nationally recognized, accepted, and respected code of ethical conduct. You tell students that their character counts and that their character counts on their willingness to tell the truth. You expect them to tell the truth even when telling the truth is not in their immediate best interest, especially when telling the truth is not in their best interest. Yet here you sit, teaching by your personal example a whole different standard of conduct. Stonewalling, you tell students, comes at the forefront of their good character. Yet here you sit, stonewalling legitimate questions about the public interest, simply to protect your own immediate best interests. When are you going to have a public forum where you allow people to ask questions? When are you going to have a public forum where you will look stakeholders in the eye and answer their legitimate questions candidly, forthrightly, and honestly? When is one of you going to stand up as an honest-to-God role model of the student standard of conduct? When will one of you demonstrate the courage and the character to show students what it looks like to hold themselves honestly accountable for their conduct and their competence? If we truly want students to grow up to embrace character and courage and honor, someone has to show them what it looks like. Following the public forum is matters of information. There's no more important matter, there's no matter of more importance than the character and the courage of board members. During your opportunity to speak on the matters that you deem important, you will speak to the issue of role modeling, either by accepting your responsibility or by denying your responsibility by talking about anything beside role modeling. Your continued refusal to answer legitimate questions cements the perception that you're hiding something, specifically widespread and deeply rooted corruption and incompetence in the leadership of the APS. It's time for you to start telling the truth. Thank you.
Agenda is the public forum, and again, I'll turn this